Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. One of the many joys of living in Vermont is the natural landscape. Our open spaces, our forests, and our mountains are all a point of pride. Our urban landscapes, particularly trees, are also a marvel. It's especially true in cities like Rutland and Burlington that have each received national recognition by Tree City USA for nearly 30 years. Across the Fence recently spoke with the Burlington Arborist about the city's trees.
What are your responsibilities as city arborist?
Well, as a city arborist, I manage all the trees which are within the city's right-of-ways, as well as in over 30 park spaces and 3 cemeteries that are run by the city. So there's about 13,000 trees currently in our inventory, and I have a crew of 4 full-time certified arborists who are out working on the trees every day.
What kinds of trees does that include?
Oh, there's about 95 different species or varieties throughout the city in our inventory. So a lot of native trees, and we're starting to use some non-native trees as well that do well in the urban environment.
What are some of the challenges in managing an urban forest?
Oh, there's many challenges. As you can see here in this neighborhood as an example, we're trying to grow trees in very limited spaces, typically between the sidewalk and the road in the greenbelt areas. We have road salt, we have low soil volumes, and it's just a really challenging environment for trees. There's conflicts with infrastructure, overhead utilities, underground utilities, sidewalks, so it's a tough place.
How do the challenges that you face change in different areas of the city?
Well, it's a lot easier to grow trees in the park spaces because, we have very open areas and the trees have a lot of room to spread out their roots. There's some neighborhoods that have very narrow green belts. There's areas in the downtown core where there is no green belt, where we're trying to grow trees in very small pits in the sidewalk. So that's an additional challenge.
What's unique about the tree landscape in Burlington?
Well, Burlington's only one of 3 communities in the state of Vermont that has a full-time arborist, and I was fortunate to come to this position with a well-formed program that's well-funded and been well-supported by the residents and the administration in the city. So, to have a full-time crew of certified arborists is pretty unique. Burlington has an urban tree canopy coverage, which is a percentage of land area in the city currently covered by trees of over 40%, which is above the national average. And for the last 25 years, we have been certified as a Tree City USA through the National Arbor Day Foundation.
Anything coming up in the future that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, there's some interesting things going on in Burlington. In the last couple of years, the city adopted these great street standards for plantings in the downtown core. So as areas of the downtown core, as streets are reconstructed, they will be using the latest technologies as far as making room for trees and those new plantings, and also incorporating stormwater rain gardens. So we'll actually be installing on 2 blocks of St. Paul Street between Main Street and Maple Street that's currently under construction. Underneath the pavement in the paved area along the sidewalk will be soil cells. So the tree will appear to be growing in a very small pit, but underneath the pervious pavers that'll be laid in that area, there will actually be a great volume of soil for the trees to utilize and grow to maturity.
And our thanks to Burlington City Arborist VJ Comai for taking the time to visit with us. For our next segment, farmers are in the classroom, where they're learning more about managing nutrients like those found in manure. Every year, UVM Extension offers classes that help farmers meet regulatory standards and act as environmental stewards. Keith Silva tells us more.
A farmer's work is never done.
Working on the equipment right now, just putting stuff in the shed, make sure it's ready to go in the spring.
Curtis Lane operates Lane Farms, a 300-cow dairy in Bristol. He's the 3rd generation to farm here. Something he's learned growing up in the dairy business is if you're going to make a change, make sure you've done your homework.
The previous generation always resists change, which is good, because if they didn't, you wouldn't make sure it worked before you did it. You'd be taking unnecessary risks. The advantage I have here with the two previous generations, if I'm not guaranteeing it's going to work, I better be quiet, because I'll never hear the end of my failure.
Curtis raises crops on 500 of the farm's 900 acres. Almost all of the tillable acreage is considered highly erodible, so any new idea that Curtis brings to the table has to protect the farm's most precious resource, its soil.
We all knew we didn't want any of our nutrients to run off because we're paying for them or we're applying them. There's a cost associated with putting them in. If they run off, they do us no good, and if they're getting into the body of water, they're doing it no good. As it's going to take generations to clean up our lake, you know, it's no different than raising a child. It all starts at home. We're going to look at what we're doing here now and say, if I'm going to stay in business, I have to be on the edge of what's coming next.
Today, you cannot afford not to do this. This is what's going to protect you from those 2-inch rainstorms.
Starting each January, at multiple locations across the state, University of Vermont Extension offers a 5-week course on nutrient management planning to help farmers balance nutrients and meet state and federal reporting standards.
I learned a lot about my soils, the makeups of the soils, and such things. I knew, oh, this field needs this to grow this, but I didn't know exactly what I was putting into it of that, you know. And we were doing the best practice that we knew of at the time, and now I understand that best practice that we were doing previously was still logical, legit, and accepted. But now if somebody asks me, why are you putting that on that land, I can tell them that it has so many pounds of nitrogen or phosphorus, whatever, and the crop needs this in the soil to remove it.
So how do we actually go from this to this? Any ideas?
In addition to getting a crash course in soil science, participants develop a nutrient management plan, or NMP, that's tailored to their farm. Heather Darby is a UVM Extension agronomist.
Increasing the drainage of your soil. Taking the initiative to write, for a farmer to write their own nutrient management plan, is a huge time investment and also a huge responsibility. And so people that actually take this class, they're here on their own free will. Nobody's making them do this. If they wanted a nutrient management plan for their farm, they could hire somebody to develop that plan for them. They don't have to do it on their own. The farmers that are here are, interested in learning more about soils, about how to better grow their crops, what the crops need, how to reduce their impact on the environment. To really educate themselves is part one, and then to get this plan at the very end is a benefit of doing that. And farmers are really here because they want to learn. How they're laid out.
I'm using it as a tool, as you would a wrench. If you plan on taking tires off, you got to have the right wrench. If I plan on farming, I got to have the right tools, and this is a tool that I have access to whenever I want it.
In order to input data and make up-to-the-minute adjustments to their plans, farmers use a computer software program called GoCrop. The software was developed by UVM Extension. There's also a mobile app, so farmers can input information while they're in the field.
The nutrient management plan is a current, what is happening today. It gives us all the information that we need to make an educated assumption of what we can do the following year based on the results we got in past years.
The plans UVM Extension helps farmers develop go beyond the farm. It's a tangible explanation of what a farmer is doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. For Darby, this kind of knowledge is just as important as having a nutrient management plan.
When farmers take the course and you ask them, why are you here? We know regulation is coming. We hear that a lot. We want to save money. We, want to improve our crops and the environment. So It has become more mainstream, more people know what it means, including the public. So it's also become a powerful sort of communication tool and gives farmers the ability to have something to show their neighbors and community. Yeah, saying like, look, I've gone through this really intensive process to do my best by the environment and by my farm and by you, and here it is, and can communicate about it too, especially if they've learned firsthand what it all means. And I think people value that as well, because knowledge is power, and this gives them more knowledge and more power to really sort of, communicate about the issues that we have in Vermont today. It's really important.
Back at Lane Farms, the clearest example that Curtis's plan is working is to look at the water coming off his fields. It's clear. The soil's not washing away, which means the nutrients are staying in place. Credit Curtis's nutrient management plan and the pride he takes as a steward of the land.
I use in discussions with people I know things I learned in my nutrient management plan about soil loss and the purpose of the cover crops, the purpose of the sprays, and the purpose of the tillage practices and so on and so forth, of what that directly does to the water quality that I have control of. Or I say control of, which is actually an incorrect word. I have responsibility for. Because if you do not own the water, you own the land around it, underneath the water. You have control of that. That has a direct impact on the water, which you don't own. Now that water that is moving through your land, you have a responsibility to the environment, to your livestock, to your family, and to the general public, that if we all take care of it, it will be there forever.
What's happening at Lane Farms is what's happening across Vermont. Farmers are making plans for today and putting them into practice for tomorrow. In Bristol, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Thank you, Keith. And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.